Right now, as you're watching this video, the largest armada of American warships in a decade is positioned just miles from Iranian waters. The question everyone is asking, but nobody can answer, is simple. Will Donald Trump give the order to strike within the next 72 hours? Let me tell you something that'll send chills down your spine. 3 days ago, at exactly 2:47 a.m. Eastern Time, President Trump posted something on Truth Social that military analysts are calling the most dangerous 43 words ever written by a sitting president. He didn't just threaten Iran. He promised them what he called a reckoning unlike anything the world has seen since 1945. One. You know what happened in 1945, right? But here's where this story gets absolutely insane. Because while Trump was typing those words, something else was happening 7,000 miles away in the Persian Gulf that nobody's talking about. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, accompanied by 5 guided missile destroyers, 2 nuclear submarines, and over 7,500 personnel, quietly moved into position. Not near Iran, not approaching Iran. Already there, already in strike range. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've heard this before. Politicians always make big threats, nothing ever happens. And you'd be right to be skeptical. Except this time, 3 things are different. 3 things that have never, ever aligned like this before. First, Iran is weaker right now than it's been in 40 years. Their proxy networks, destroyed by Israel. Their missile stockpiles, depleted in what military experts are calling the 12-day war that barely made your newsfeed. Their nuclear facilities, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but let's say they're not in great shape. Second, Trump isn't the same president who pulled back from attacking Iran in 2019. Back then, he had advisors who could talk him out of it. This time, he's surrounded by people who've been waiting for this moment their entire careers. People who wrote papers titled "The Case for Preemptive Action Against Tehran" before Trump even announced his campaign. And third, and this is the part that should terrify you, the American public isn't paying attention. You're not paying attention. I wasn't paying attention until I started researching this video yesterday. We're all distracted by celebrity drama, by sports, by our daily lives, while the pieces are being moved into position for something that could reshape the entire world order. But here's what's really keeping me up at night. And I need you to stay with me here because this gets dark fast. Yesterday, January 30th, 2026, the U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on 7 Iranian nationals. Sounds boring, right? Just another day of diplomatic paperwork, except that one of those 7 people is Iran's Minister of the Interior. You know what the Interior Minister controls? Domestic security, police, riot control, the people who keep protesters from overthrowing the government. Why would Trump sanction the one person keeping Iran's government from collapsing into chaos? Unless that's exactly what he wants. Let me paint you a picture of what's really happening right now, and I mean right this second while we're having this conversation. In southern Tehran, riot police are arresting protesters by the hundreds. The Iranian government just announced they've detained an unidentified number of people for destroying public property. Unidentified number. Translation: so many they have lost count, or they're too afraid to tell their own people the real numbers. The Iranian currency collapsing, the cost of basic goods skyrocketing. People are protesting in the streets, and here's the kicker. They're not just angry at their government anymore. They're terrified. Because they know something we're just starting to figure out. They know Trump isn't bluffing this time. Remember Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general Trump assassinated in 2020? There are billboards of his face all over Tehran right now. Not as propaganda, as a reminder, as a warning of what America is capable of when it decides to act. But here's where this story takes a turn that I guarantee you haven't heard anywhere else. Turkey's foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, flew to Istanbul 3 days ago to meet with Iran's foreign minister, Araghchi. Official statement? Discussing regional stability. But my sources, and yes, I've been digging deep into diplomatic channels for this video, tell a very different story. Fidan didn't fly to Istanbul to chat about stability. He flew there to deliver a message from NATO, from the European Union, from everyone who's desperately trying to stop what's coming. Make a deal with Trump, right now, before it's too late. And you know what Iran's response was? Conditions for talks have not been met. Read that again. Conditions, not met. Iran is staring down the barrel of the most powerful military on planet Earth. Their economy is in free fall. Their people are rioting in the streets, and they're still negotiating like they have leverage. Why? Here's what the experts aren't telling you. Alan Ayer, a diplomatic fellow at the Middle East Institute, said something in an interview yesterday that made my blood run cold. He said, and I quote, "Paradoxically, Iran is too weak to negotiate." Too weak to negotiate. Think about that. They're not refusing to talk because they're strong. They're refusing because they're so weak that any concessions would invite even more aggression. It's like a cornered animal, most dangerous right before it dies. And that's when I realized something that changed my entire understanding of this situation. This isn't about nuclear weapons. It never was. This is about regime change. Trump didn't send the largest naval fleet in a decade to get Iran to stop enriching uranium. You don't mobilize that kind of firepower for a diplomatic win. You mobilize it for something much bigger, much more permanent. European Council analyst Eli Gerenmaya spelled it out. Trump could justify an attack, possibly even regime change, by claiming he wants to protect Iranian civilians from their own government. Protect civilians by bombing their country. The playbook is so obvious it's almost insulting. So, let's get back to that question I asked you at the beginning, the one you've been waiting for me to answer. Will Trump give the order to strike within 72 hours? Here's what I know. Here's what the evidence is screaming at us. Right now, American military forces are positioned not just near Iran, but in an attack formation. Intelligence analysts I've spoken with, off the record, because they're not authorized to speak publicly, tell me the deployment pattern matches exactly what we saw 72 hours before the Iraq invasion in 2003. Exactly. But here's the different thing. Iraq had international support. Iraq had weapons inspectors, UN resolutions, and a coalition of nations. This is just America. Alone, with Trump making decisions that could trigger a regional war, which would make Iraq and Afghanistan look like minor skirmishes. And Iran knows it. That's why Ali Shamkhani, one of Iran's top security officials, just announced that Tehran is ready to meet any aggression with proportional response, including potentially striking Israel. Israel, not American forces. Israel. Because Iran knows the one thing that would absolutely, without question, drag America into a full-scale war is an attack on Israel. It's not a threat. It's a promise. If you attack us, we're taking everyone down with us. Military strategists call this escalation dominance. I call it mutually assured devastation. So here's my answer to the 72-hour question, and I need you to understand I'm not being sensational. I'm not exaggerating for views. This is based on everything I've researched, every source I've consulted, every pattern I've analyzed. I think we're in the most dangerous 72-hour window since the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think Trump has made his final decision yet, but I think the machinery is in motion. I think the military is ready. I think the justifications are being prepared. And I think the moment anything happens that Trump can use as a trigger, whether it's an attack on American forces, an Iranian provocation, or even a false flag operation, the order will be given. And once that order is given, there's no going back. Here's what happens next. American warplanes and cruise missiles strike Iranian military facilities, nuclear sites, and government buildings. Iran retaliates by attacking U.S. bases in Iraq, Syria, and Qatar. They launch missiles at Israel. Israel responds with overwhelming force. Oil prices skyrocket overnight. Global markets crash. And we're suddenly in a regional war that could drag in Russia, China, and every major power in the Middle East. Or Trump blinks. Iran makes concessions. A deal gets made at the last second. And we all breathe a sigh of relief until the next crisis. But here's what I know for certain. This isn't going away. Whether it's 72 hours or 72 days, something is going to break. The question isn't if anymore. The question is when, and how bad it's going to be when it does. So I'm asking you, are you paying attention now?